And being a good citizen is more than just making sure somebody's ready to go be a contributing member of society. To me, I believe we have responsibility to produce the future leaders for not only the state of Ohio, but our nation and the world.
Welcome to the Leadership Initiative podcast, where we share strategies, stories, and insights from today's most influential leaders. In today's episode, we have the privilege of sharing an exclusive conversation with the 17th president of The Ohio State University, Ted Carter. This episode is a recording of our recent webinar, Leading with Purpose, Insights from President Ted Carter, moderated by Dr. Tim Judge, Chair of the Department of Management and Human Resources at the Fisher College of Business. During the conversation, President Carter reflects on his extraordinary leadership journey, from his distinguished service in the U.S. Navy to his roles leading major academic institutions. We're thrilled to bring you this thought-provoking discussion filled with valuable insights on purpose-driven leadership.
Welcome to Leading with Purpose, Insights from President Ted Carter. I'm Tim Judge, Chair of the Management and Human Resources Department at the Fisher College of Business, and your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce President Ted Carter, the 17th President of The Ohio State University. Since joining Ohio State, President Carter dedicated his time to learning about the university community, getting to know its people and traditions, and understanding what makes this university uniquely great. It continues a collaborative approach to leadership he honed during a 4-decade career in higher education and the United States Navy. Before becoming a Buckeye, President Carter led the University of Nebraska system, the U.S. Naval Academy, and the U.S. Naval War College. He is a retired Vice Admiral and able Navigator who has given 38 years of service to our country and logged more than 6,300 flying hours. Personally, I wanted to have this webinar in the cockpit of an F-16, but we could not make that happen. President Carter has a passion for Ohio State's land-grant mission, and he is committed to leveraging the university's size and expertise to improve the lives of Ohioans and shape the future of higher education. Please join me in welcoming President Ted Carter to our webinar. Welcome, President.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Tim, it's great to be with you, and what a great opportunity to highlight the great work that's being done at the Fisher College of Business. So great to be with everybody today.
So I'm going to start with the first big picture sort of question, and I know you've been on the job 9 months, so you may not have a complete answer, but here I go. What's your vision for Ohio State in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, the vision that I have that I'm going to articulate here in a second, and the entire approach to saying yes when I was recruited to come be the 17th president at The Ohio State University are definitely connected. As I transitioned out of uniform, I led at the Naval Academy for 5 years, really proud of what we were able to accomplish there. And as I transitioned and I became the 8th president at the University of Nebraska system, I learned a tremendous amount in my time there at Nebraska. And as I was watching how the movement in higher education was occurring across the nation, the value of higher education, even the questioning of whether a college degree is worth that, the affordability piece, and even the dialogue that's happening today about that part of it, put on top of that the enrollment cliff, some of the other challenges in higher ed, and then put on top of that the world events that just make it really more complicated than ever. I wanted to come to The Ohio State University because I believe that the public large, and we are large, land-grant universities, R1 research universities are the future of higher education. Now, that's a big group of universities that fit into that category, but I also take a look at the size, scale, and scope of Ohio State on top of its academic rankings, and it kind of puts us in a very unique position. There is nobody else that has 19,000 acres, 65,000 plus students. We're almost at 67,000 today, 8,500 faculty. We have the largest faculty in the country, and a research arm that's number 11 in the country, moving to number 10, and one of the largest clinical care and medical research portion of our portfolio. So we have all these pieces, and we're operating already at such great levels of accomplishment in our programs. I believe that we are the future of higher education. That's my vision. And that's not a knock on the Ivy League schools or the schools that are charging $80,000 in tuition. As I look across where education is going, the value proposition, the affordability, the accessibility, and getting a world-class education, both at the undergraduate, the master's, PhD, and the professional level. When you take a look at that across the board, Ohio State is uniquely positioned to be the future of higher education. So that's my vision. We are in the process of going from the listening learning mode for my first 6 months here to what I now call action mode, where we've been doing workshops with all the different constituents that touch our large campus and our regional campuses to ask the question about what should we value and what large-scale, bold initiatives should we be introducing so that we can be the future of higher education. We are going to put that into writing, and we're going to articulate that framework on November 8th, which will be the date of my investiture. And from November 8th through the end of that next fiscal year, June 30th, we will come up with these initiatives that will fit within that framework. And then we will be on a 10-year runway, a 10-year strategic plan to execute, measure the things that we say we're going to do, and then move the needle. And this is not just about rankings. I mean, rankings, sometimes get a little overblown. They still matter. But I want to be the institution when people hear The Ohio State University, they don't just think about how great our sports programs are. They think about us as an academic and a research institution and a workplace where everybody wants to come to work.
That's very well said. So I want to ask you about the Fisher College of Business. How do you see it fitting into the university? And as you know, we have a great interim dean, but we have a dean search going on. And so what advice would you give the new dean for advancing the college?
Well, the first thing I would say to when I start interviewing the new deans, you're not joining a fixer-upper program. I mean, this is a program that's nationally ranked. Number 7 in Publix just came out in the U.S. News and World Report rankings. That's a pretty big bragging right. So we have a great business college already. I personally have met with the Fisher family. They are very excited about the future. And I would say that, of the 15 colleges that we have on our Columbus campus here, I put the Fisher College of Business right up there at the top. I mean, it's one of the most important pieces that we have. As all of our listeners know, we here in the Columbus campus are blended right into the urban metropolitan environment here in Columbus. And Columbus, the city itself, is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing city in the entire United States. It's quite remarkable. We just surpassed Austin as one of the most popular places to come to. And then you think about all the big muscle movements that are coming here. Amgen moving their pharmaceutical production here. The wonderful relationship that we already have with Honda that goes for over 20 years in the future of battery development. And then, of course, Intel, who will eventually, I think, be here with over $100 billion of investment to make us the semiconductor production line of the world right here in the Midwest and the Central Ohio region. So, all that adds up to, we're expecting to grow this region in the Central Ohio and Columbus by 1 million people in the next 25 years. So there's going to be this amazing growth here. And I go through all that to say that of all of the colleges that we have, the one that will have to be most plugged into the business aspect is our Fisher College of Business. So that dean will be an important part of not only what he or she does down and in for that college, but also the up and out with our business community, and then across with all of our other deans. And then throw in the importance of where does artificial intelligence work with what we want to do in business and our MBA programs. We're going to have to make sure that every single student that comes here, regardless whether they're in the humanities, whether they're an engineer or in one of our 7 medical colleges, is going to have to understand the principles of artificial intelligence. And I think that will be an important part of our business college as well.
Great. Well, Ted, I want to ask you now about, faculty and staff, the employees. As you know, Ohio State has more than 40,000 employees. So we're, of course, one of the larger employers anywhere. What priorities do you have for ensuring that faculty and staff are happy and productive in their careers?
Well, the first thing is we have to be able to have a dialogue. And I'm proud that we offered a listening survey this last year. The first one has been offered to our faculty and staff in 10 years. I'm a little embarrassed to say it's been that long. And I think that's really important because I need to hear from that very large constituency what's good, make sure that we keep doing the good things, and then what's not good. And I'm hearing things like, childcare is a problem. Housing is a challenge. Obviously, never cease to mean how challenging parking is, right? So all those things are day-to-day things. They're a little bit more than what I would call ankle biters. They're real issues. We need to make sure we're attending to that. Certainly pay, compensation, benefits. We want to make sure that we are competitive in all of those markets. So we'll continue to review those and not just wait every 5 or 6 years to say, oh, we've fallen a little bit behind on compensating correctly with our peers. So we've got to kind of bake that in. We're fortunate that financially we are strong resource-wise here at Ohio State, but it's not an infinite pool either. There's at some point you're going to run out of money. So we've got to be smart about that and make sure that our financial programs are dynamic enough to meet the needs of this very large, complex organization. And then finally, I just say that I'm really proud of our shared governance model. I've been in the shared governance model in my career for a long time now, 11 years. And this is one of the most powerful shared governance models I've ever seen. So we have faculty, staff, and students at every level that have a voice in what happens here when it comes to big policies. And I think that's a strength of this university.
Great. So as you know, as many employees as OSU has, it of course has even more students. So what initiatives are you most excited about to enhance student development and success at Ohio State?
Well, it is the main thing, and we can't lose sight of that. Student success should be something that everybody is invested in, whether we're a researcher, working clinical care, or a faculty member. I mean, it's the reason that we exist, and it isn't to talk to us in terms of a vocational manner, making sure that we're giving a strong pathway to workforce and workforce development. This is really why we exist. This is going back to our motto that we took on in 1938, which I've talked about, which is education for citizenship. I believe we have a mandate to take young minds, by the way, to include adult learners too, but to take these minds and help them develop mentally, socially, emotionally. This is a period of growth in that 18 to 22 years old at the undergraduate level where people are going to change the most socially. That's one of the reasons I'm really proud that our freshmen and sophomore live on campus. I think that's a really big plus for us. But then also we have a responsibility to make sure that we're giving them that value in education. I'm really going to focus on how we get our students through in 4 years or less for an undergraduate degree. It'll cost them less. It'll give them the preparation they need to go to that next level, whether it be furthering their education or thinking about getting into the workforce. I think we need to continue to invest in internships. And internships is part of the experiential. And that's the other thing that we're hearing is people want to come to Ohio State because they want the experience of living on the Oval. We took 80,000 applications for this incoming freshman class. It's a record. By the way, 60% of those applications, about 50,000, were from out of state. So there's something special going on here where people want to come here. But we have to do a better job, I think, of making sure that every single student gets the opportunity to do a study abroad, go work for a nonprofit, go work within an elected official's office, whether it be at the federal level, the state, or the local, or the county. And then, of course, work with business. And that means big business, small and medium-sized businesses. And that's also a challenge because a lot of the smaller businesses may not have the kind of resources to have paid internships. So these are some things that we're going to look at and explore to make sure that every student gets that type of experience to know what's out there and what's going to be best for them in their future career. So I'm excited about where we are. We do a lot of this really well. Our graduation rate right now, which is part of that measure, it's not all of it, is the best we've ever seen. I'd like to see us get to a 4-year graduation rate of about 80%. We're sitting at about 72, 73% now. We're over 80% on a 6-year graduation program. I'd also like to offer programs that allow students to accelerate their time here should they choose. And I think that's something that's new, whether you graduate in 3 years or 3.5 years. There's only 2 ways to do that. One is you compress the 4-year 120 credit program for non-engineering students, or you come up with different curricula that could actually explore what is a new and evolving academic way to create a 3-year degree. Those are some things that I think we can explore. We don't really have that here yet. So there's lots of opportunities to look for where we can improve, expand, and make sure that we are the best in the country at providing student outcomes and student success.
So as you know, Ted, I mean, universities compete against one another in some ways, but they also face a lot of similar challenges. And as you also noted, OSU is a leader among institutions of higher education. So as a leader of one of the nation's largest and most prominent universities, what are some of the biggest challenges you foresee for higher education in the coming years, and how might we work together to address some of those?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is, the loss in faith in large institutions, and then this is across the board. So I'm going to sadly have to include higher ed in this, and higher ed had been immune from this for decades. I mean, if you go back to the 1980s, the American public had over 80% confidence level in higher education. Even 10 years ago, it was over 55%, and Gallup just did a survey on this. And today it's at about 36%. Now that's high level of confidence. When you look at high level or high, the story isn't quite as bad. But if you look at all the large institutions in our country, whether it be the legislature, elected officials, whether it be the military, whether it be the medical community, the clergy, the pharmaceutical community, everybody's questioning large institutions. And this is part of the divisive nature of our country right now. And higher ed has sadly part of that conversation. I believe, as is this vision to be the future of higher education, that The Ohio State University is one of those institutions that can turn that conversation around. If you live in a rural part of the country, or if you're in a small private academic institution, and remember, there's about 5,000 academic institutions across the country. A lot of those institutions are really struggling. And some of this is because of this faith in higher ed. Some of it's the cost and affordability. And some of it is sadly what's called the enrollment cliff, which is a declining population of graduating high school students because of the birth rates that happened between 2007 and 2009. Amazingly, we right now are not seeing that at Ohio State. I mentioned the application numbers in the largest incoming freshman class in our history at over 9,500, almost a 900 student growth from our largest class of 8,600 in 2019. So we're going against some of those trends. And by the way, the Association of American Universities just recently did a poll of 1,000 Ohioans, and Ohioans, of which, remember, 70% of our student body are Ohioans, said they have a high rate of trust and a degree from Ohio State, over 70%. So currently, we are living a much better perception of these trends in higher ed nationally than what we're seeing here in Ohio. But we've got to do that more and take that to the national level.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I first came here 8 years ago, I thought a lot of the passion for the Buckeyes was mostly about the football team. And of course, that does exist. That is a real thing. But I think it's just remarkable that, you go throughout the state and there's just a lot of belief and trust and faith in the university and the mission that it does. And it really is, I think, inspiring when you go across the corners of the state and see that. And I'm sure you do that all the time. And the other thing is that you were talking about enrollments. Like, we have state universities in states that actually touch Ohio that have really struggled with this. So I think it is something, that it is a trend to be aware of, but we are advantaged in that we've not really seen that as much as some of our neighboring states have. So I have a few more questions for you, Ted. So I want to talk a bit about and return kind of back to leadership on the topic. And, I teach mostly undergraduates, and sometimes they've not always had the opportunity to lead, and I love teaching our undergrads. Sometimes because of opportunity, sometimes because, as you noted, they're still sort of finding their way. What do you think Ohio State can do, given that we're so large, to empower students to be the kind of leaders our society needs?
Well, first of all, I go back to I call it the mission statement or motto, education for citizenship. I keep going back to that because I think it tells us what we're supposed to do. And being a good citizen is more than just making sure somebody's ready to go be a contributing member of society. To me, I believe we have a responsibility to produce the future leaders for not only the state of Ohio, but our nation and the world. So that means that our programs have to have that in the viewfinder. And again, as I mentioned, the internship piece, I think that's part of it. I think this new module that we've offered on campus this fall, Listen, Learn, Discuss, is a great opportunity. And that's being wildly popular with our students. They want to be involved in that. Obviously, world events, using First Amendment and freedom of speech is something that I've spoken to, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. And we're seeing that on university campuses all over the country. That's part of what being a leader as a student is. I mean, making sure that you not only have a voice, but your voice is heard. But also understanding that it's okay to disagree with somebody's viewpoint, but coming to a place like Ohio State is where you can open your mind to listen to those other viewpoints. And yes, of course, you're welcome to disagree. Sometimes disagreeing better is a term that I embrace to say that, just because you don't agree with somebody doesn't mean that you have to be violent against them or think there's something wrong with them. It's a chance for us to let our students see themselves and grow here. I think all those are really important parts. And I think we'll find other ways, again, through these expanded internship programs to give our students leadership opportunities outside of our campus. Now, again, for those that are not familiar with Ohio State, we offer 1,400 clubs and activities here. That's a big number of activities. So within every one of those, no matter whether we're talking about writing for the student newspaper, the Lantern, or whether you're, part of a language club, there's leadership opportunities within each of those activities. And that doesn't even include going and being part of Greek life, which we embrace very well here. So there's lots of leadership opportunities, even within our own environment here.
I think to add to that, I think one way we can grow is, there's such a sense that I've always felt a collaboration among the different units at Ohio State, because we kind of do everything in a way. So we have a lot of programs and offices and activities, but I think the more we can connect experiential leadership development to our academic programming, I think we can grow more in that. And I think that would be really welcome on the part of people and achieve the kind of development you're talking about. So I appreciate that. What advice would you give? I know you give talks to student groups a lot. What advice would you give to a new or emerging student leader to further develop their leadership skills? Like, what can they do based on your career and life experiences to develop their leadership skills?
Yeah, the first advice I give to young people when I'm asked that question is, don't be afraid to get engaged, get involved. You can't really do leadership by reading books or even reading biographies or studying somebody else's leadership style. Those are all helpful, they inform, but the more that you get into the crucible is where you're going to really learn. And it's okay to make a mistake. Some mistakes, can have consequences, but keeping the mistakes to as low a level as possible. And then the last thing I would just point out, again, to give a shorter answer to this, is be ready. I can't tell you how many times in my own career and dealing with other young people, whether it be in uniform or even on a campus, where somebody was called upon at a very young age, and I'm talking about in late teens, early 20s, to lead something very important. So when those opportunities come, don't be afraid to take them because that's where you're going to get the most of growth in your life. And for me personally, I'm very thankful that I had a lot of those opportunities very young. And those are the things that developed me in my career.
There are a lot of great questions that we'll share with you, so I can only get to a few. One of them is very personal. I find interesting. I think people would learn from is, how do you balance your limited time? So you have a lot of demands on your schedule and a lot of requests made of you. How do you kind of work through setting priorities and being able to manage your own time? Because I think that's often a challenge with a lot of high-level leaders.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And unfortunately, even before I came here, I would tell you I'm the worst to answer that. I work harder than I probably should. And I'm an early riser, and I do a lot of my thinking and reading early in the morning. I work out in the morning, and then I try to give myself some personal time in the evening when I can. But these types of jobs, these very high profile public jobs, are tough. And I will admit they're not for everybody. I mean, I don't get through the airport anymore or sit on an airplane without somebody knowing who I am. And when you have the type of personality that's approachable, you got to be ready to, take questions and talk to people. And I'm good with that. But I did learn early on that, when I talked about those values, that loyalty part to yourself first, it's really important. And when I did convocation this year and when I get to talk to students, it's one of the things I really press upon. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to help you and give you great advice and be there for you to mentor you. But if you're not willing to take care of yourself first, and that means managing your time, where you go, what you put into your body, how you take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and again, the social side, then nobody else can do it for you. So those things are really important. Developing that pattern as soon as you can is really important. I've gone through spans in my life where I got very dedicated into my workout programs, and then I've fallen off that wagon on times when I said, "Oh, I'm just too busy." And I'll admit, during COVID, I fell off that wagon a little bit and I gained some weight and I wasn't happy with myself. And when I showed up here, I made a decision that I was going to get that back on track, and I have. And you just make it part of your schedule. The most successful people often are the ones that are the busiest. And I have found that to also be true. So it's okay to have a very full, busy schedule. But at the end of the day, you've got to make sure you give yourself some time for yourself. And I mean where you don't have anything scheduled, where you just have time to think and download and digest some of the big things that you may have seen over the course of the day. So yeah, I agree that these jobs are large and complicated, and you got to be careful. It doesn't matter whether you're staff, faculty, or an administrator or a student. Their burnout is a real thing, and you've got to take that into account.
Another question we had was about failure, and I just had a great podcast with a business leader in Columbus, Michelle Brown, and we were talking about like failing and growing from that. What's your view about that? Like, if you're willing to share, is there some failure that you've had in your career that you've learned from, and like if members of your team sort of don't accomplish something successfully, kind of how do you approach that with them?
Yeah, we need a couple hours here to talk about how many failures I've had in my life. And what I would tell people is you will have failures in your life, and it won't be the end of any career. You can never really be successful without learning from the things that didn't go either quite right. And the best people that are successful take what they see or what is actually something that didn't go the way you wanted to, learn from it, make adjustments, and make sure that you turn it into a positive. My entire career actually was always went the way that I never got my first choice. I know that might sound odd to be president of the Ohio State University and say that, but a lot of the things that I really wanted to do didn't happen. Quite frankly, I didn't choose to go into higher education. I wanted to stay operational in my Navy career. When I got asked that the first time, I thought I did something wrong, like I was being penalized. And it turned out that it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that I got to lead the U.S. Naval War College and then go to the Naval Academy. I can't describe to the audience how many times I interviewed for top flight academic jobs and was turned down. And I had all but given up. In fact, I had actually taken a job as I was transitioning into the civilian workforce to go work for a company named Salesforce. I was probably the oldest hire they ever made. And I actually never really worked there that long because University of Nebraska did eventually offer me that position. And then that worked out great, and here I am. I'll just give one other short sea story here, and it's a life and death situation that makes the extreme point. But it was some decisions that I made that actually put myself and another pilot in this situation, and the outcome obviously worked out okay. But in 1999, I was a new commander of an F-14 squadron. We were flying off the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt. We were going through our final workups to be ready to go on deployment. And my youngest pilot in that fighter squadron, I had 30 pilots in the squadron, was really struggling. He was really struggling with how to land on the aircraft carrier. And that's an important skill that you just have to do. You got to come back home. So I gave him an ultimatum that if he didn't improve his performance, we were going to have to give him a performance board and determine whether or not he would even continue flying. Well, his performance improved to the point that I made the decision, and this was my decision, that I would reward him. And this was a decision that, as I reflect back on, put us in a situation that almost ended very badly. So the reward was, on the fly off, when we were flying all the airplanes off the aircraft carrier to go home for about a month and spend some downtime before we went on a long extended deployment, I put this young pilot in the very first airplane to launch off the ship for the return home. And I would get in his back seat to ride home with him. As we launched off the flight deck, by the way, this happened about 25 years ago, the F-14 Tomcat, as it was clearing the catapult, going from stationary to 200 miles an hour, in full afterburner. And as we left the flight deck of the ship 60 feet over the water climbing, I had a sense something was wrong with the airplane, and it was. Fuel had somehow busted out of a fuel line, and we had fuel coming out of the entire airplane, everywhere, from the back end of the airplane. And you could smell it, I could see it, and I still couldn't explain, even to this day, how we didn't explode. And now I'm in a situation where I put my youngest pilot flying in an airplane that's now in extremis, and I'm in the airplane with him, and we have no place to go. We're 100 miles away from shore. We're 100 miles off the coast of Kitty Hawk, interestingly, where the Wright brothers invented flight, and we're trying to get to Virginia Beach. And it takes us about 30 seconds to realize we're going to run out of fuel based on the rate of fuel that we're leaking. And we've even got trap fuel. And of course, we're a really heavy airplane. And now I've got my youngest pilot who I put in the situation with myself. So that was arguably an epic failure. But then you take all the other elements of being what I call player coach type of leadership style, this element of trust. I put so much trust in this young pilot that as we were now getting as fast as we could to shore, probably going to have to go through a controlled ejection. I had never ejected in my, at that point, 20-year career. And by the way, this pilot has less than 2 years of flying experience. I spotted an airfield that was within the fuel that we had left that had been a World War II training base down in North Carolina in Dare County, and a 3,000-foot long runway. We normally need about 12,000 feet of runway to put an F-14 down safely. And I tell this young pilot, I'm going to teach him, without any stick and throttle in my hands, how to land an airplane in that short of a runway. And I asked him, I said, do you think you can do that? This is why we're descending down. We're talking minutes of fuel left. And he said, I think so. I said, that's not a good enough answer. You're going to get one shot at this. And again, now I'm questioning. I put this poor young lad in this situation to do a 1 in 1,000 type of landings. And, in the most amazing situation, he stopped the airplane in 2,000 feet of the 3,000-foot runway. We saved the airplane, saved his life, saved my life. And it's an amazing story of a mistake, but one that turned into a positive outcome, all happening within the period of about 30 minutes.
I have a mentor who told me this summer, Tim, things never go as planned. It's all about how you adapt. And I've remembered that. So that's a great story. So Ted, the last question I have is a fun one. When will we see you down with the ROTC members doing push-ups at the next OSU home football game? And since you're now toned, I think you'd be ready for that.
I am ready for that. That's a good challenge. I'm going to have to get that into my, all the places I get to on game day. I've learned already that game day at the Shoe as the university president here at Ohio State, it's not like any other experience. I mean, obviously I did this at Navy. I did do push-ups with the plebes at Navy. That was always part of my show there. It was a different experience at Nebraska, but here I put in a lot of steps getting around all over the stadium from the field to all the folks that I have to visit. But I will get to that. I will find a time where I'm down there, especially maybe one of those early non-conference games where we're putting up 50 against opponents, so I can get out there and get a real workout in with our OTC.
The crowd would love it.
Yeah, no, I promise I'm going to get to that. That's a great question.
Oh, great. Well, Ted, thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor and a privilege, and we're very appreciative of giving us your time. And I'm sure the audience loved it, and we'll be sharing this in a broader community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. It was great to be with a great set of questions. And to everybody out there, go Bucks.
Thanks again for listening. This podcast is presented by the Max M. Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. For more episodes, find us on Apple, Google, or podcast.osu.edu/leadership initiative. See you next time.